So one thing that every debater has to struggle with and figure out a way to manage to keep frustration in check is what do you do about the uneven and completely unpredictable quality of judging? And one of our most experienced debaters, a young man named Eric Fromm, who's going to graduate in about 6 days, this last fall, he had come off a string of tournaments where he had done really well, pulled off good wins he felt good about, got speaker awards, gave the only loss to the debater who won the tournament a couple of times. But then we got to the end of the prelims, and he told me, "Oh, I'm pretty sure I cleared it. I think it all went very well." And we got his ballots back, and he went 1-5. So, what is it that you can do both along the way and when you step back and put it in the big picture to not let that become such a burden on you that it starts to discourage you? And what I have a few tips for specific judge adaptation to the situation where a judge is a complete unknown quantity, where you haven't seen them before and you really don't have that good of a read on them. And then at the end, I have an idea for you to use to try to reframe the situation. And it's an idea that I've talked about a lot, and it's really kind of fundamental to all of forensics. And I would say that spending enough time, enough hours putting in the work to try to move through your apprenticeship in forensics and get good at it, I would hope that you would take that lesson at the end and internalize it. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. The first thing that I think you ought to do when you have a judge who is going to be completely unfamiliar to you is you want to watch the judge absolutely as much as possible. And I think that most people in forensics in any league, no matter what the percentage of lay judges, most get experienced, most know what the importance is of sizing a judge up at the beginning, of introducing yourself where that's appropriate in a region where that's kind of a custom, making a little chit chat about, so what is it that you like to see in a debate if the judge is open to doing something like that, watching to see if they're flowing. But something that I've seen that a lot of debaters do is that's something that they sort of categorize with opening up their boxes and getting their files all lined up. It's something you do at the beginning to get ready, but it's not something you do throughout. And I've coached a number of debaters over the years and given the advice to debaters in just about every league that I'm aware of, where the one thing that I advised them to do that they came back and told me made a huge difference was watch the judge the whole time. In two-person debate, the one who's flowing, one of the easiest mistakes to fix that I see is that the one who's flowing often will sit with her back to the judge. Don't do that. Sit where you can face the judge, and you have to work, you have to pay attention, you have to read what's in front of you, but from time to time, you should have a little clock running in your head. How many seconds have gone by that you haven't at least glanced at the judge and sized up how it's going? Does the judge look confused? Is the judge frowning, shaking her head? Is that the kind of thing that you need to make a little note of and maybe mention to your partner during prep time, especially if your partner is doing the two and is going to give the last rebuttal? If you are the person who's speaking, then it is important that you concentrate on what you're saying, but there's this balance that goes into every speaking situation between the commitment to your material and the commitment to your audience. And that's the kind of balance that you adapt based on the situation. So if you have a manuscript speech, if you're the Pope or if you're the president and most of your speeches are written out word for word, then you can devote a lot of your commitment to your material. But if you're a stand-up comic, you're going to devote a lot of your attention and your commitment to the audience, and you're going to try to read them very carefully so that you can make fine micro adjustments based on what's happening. And I would say that when you have a judge who's an unknown quantity, it's very important that you do that. And a drill that I've used a few times to help students get a sense of how much attention they need to pay is we'll do a practice debate where we have several people watch, and we'll arrange ahead of time for them to make fairly subtle changes whenever the debater who's speaking looks down. So we'll have a debater, one of the people who's watching, one of the people in the audience, start the speech with a pen behind their ear, and then as soon as the debater looks down to read something or looks down to shuffle papers, they'll switch. And then ask at the end of the speech, okay, what changed? Because what that does is that gets the debater used to thinking, I need to really see the judge. I need to not just treat eye contact as I look up, I make eye contact, I go back to where I'm doing, but my attention is really on my content. But what you need to do is you need to notice what are the nonverbal cues, what are the clues that you're getting that the judge is pleased by an argument, responds to an argument, recognizes an argument, even things as little as the eye flash of being intrigued, or just the little frown of confusion, or I don't know if I go with that. So very, very carefully watch the judge, not just at the beginning, but try to watch the judge throughout and make adjustments. Second thing, The second thing is you want to have a certain number of practice debates that are aimed at what the Heath brothers in a book called Made to Stick call the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge is you know your arguments really, really well. You're very familiar with them. And as it gets late in the season, this is something that we used to focus on with nationals coming up. As it gets late in the season, a lot of the judges you have recognize acronyms, know the backstory of a lot of pieces of legislation, know a lot about the political situation currently going on, and you get reinforced, you get rewarded for condensing and condensing and condensing explanations. And then you get a judge who just gets completely lost. And so we do a certain number of practice debates where we have someone who's intelligent and a good listener, but has paid no attention to the debate topic, and make adjustments to try to make sure that every bit of insider talk, not just debate jargon, but topic subject area jargon, gets extra explained. Because if you do that, you are far more likely to stumble over one of the most common mistakes people make with unfamiliar judges, assuming knowledge that they don't have. So you want to, as the season winds down and you're getting ready to go to nationals, you want to have some debates where you're put under as much pressure as possible, and you really have to operate at the top of your game and really put on a master class of debating. But you also want to have a certain number of debates where you want the quality of the explanation ideally to be that high, but your top priority is that someone with no background in debate will not get confused, will not lose track of what you're saying even once. And the difficult balance to strike there is when you're explaining everything, it is tempting for those explanations to ramble. And so you need to combine that with whatever drills you've got to work on your word economy to make sure that every time you arrive at a concept that could possibly be unfamiliar, you put in an explanation, but it's a quick one. Maybe a quick, concrete little analogy. Maybe a quick backup reference. Maybe you just spell out the acronym. But you can't let the explanations take over to where you fail to cover and you leave a lot of important arguments unaddressed. So that's another shift in emphasis, that if you have some practice debates to get you primed to make that adjustment, then when you have a judge who's an unknown quantity and you don't get a good read on them before the debate, they don't pop out a pad and paper and start flowing and you think, this is a judge who sees a lot of debates, you're not sure what's going on, then you can make the counter curse of knowledge adjustments and make sure that you don't confuse them at any point. Third thing, it is extraordinarily important in debates where a judge is an unknown quantity that you radiate confidence. Radiate confidence. If a judge is lacking the contextual cues, if a judge is lacking the foundation of knowledge that sometimes makes it easy for the judge to make a very precise and confident decision, then very often judges will go with who sounds like they think that they're winning. And at nationals, very often I think it's going to be a wrestling match, who can sound the more confident, because you're not going up against a lot of brand new novices. You're going up against people who have all been tested in the crucible of competition in their own region. So many times you'll sound confident, they'll sound confident, but you do not want to be behind in the confidence comparison. A drill that I've done with some debaters over the years who had a problem with projecting confidence. This is the same kind of drill that I've talked about with other delivery issues over the past few weeks in some of these videos. I would have them just role play, re-give part of a speech. You can take any old rebuttal or constructive and do just a 60-second redo, and I'll tell them role play having no confidence at all, and sound very questioning and sound very timid, lots of up talk, and draw yourself back in and get kind of quiet and squint like you're thinking hard and show what lack of confidence looks like. And then look absolutely determined. I am going to persuade you of this. I have had it with you not accepting this, and well, that's a little too angry. And when we do this drill, we distinguish between angry and determined are not the same thing. Anger is unattractive. You really don't want to project a lot of anger. Maybe occasionally a little moral indignation or moral outrage, but anger tends to be repulsive. So you distinguish between that, so you sound absolutely determined. I am going to get this idea through you. You're going to get it, and you're going to love it when you get it. And then you establish those as endpoints. There's no confidence at all as a 0. There's hyper-confident as an arrogant jerk as a 10. And then what you do in most of your debates is you want to aim for about a 6. But then when you have a complete unknown quantity as a judge, maybe a 6.5 or 7. Boy, I am glad you made that argument. That is excellent. As a matter of fact, I got an even better reason why that's true. Just confidence radiating out of you. The third bit of advice for when you have a judge that is an unknown quantity is, did I say third? I think I'm up to fourth. The fourth bit of advice for when you have a judge who's an unknown quantity is, that is the time that you want to, I've already mentioned a balance in commitment between your content and your delivery, but you want your delivery to be as good as it can possibly be. And I have occasionally told debaters before a particular round, in this round, treat your debate speech as though it were a platform. Treat it not even as an extemp speech, treat it like a platform. And even though you want to sound right on the merits, even though you want to make smart arguments and you want to reason effectively, it's very important in this round that you monitor yourself a lot to make sure that you're doing all the delivery things right, that your eye contact is very good, that you're smiling appropriately at particular moments, things you might not bother to do in particular debates. And if it's a debate where the arguments are difficult to explain and the other team is very good and they're putting a lot of pressure on you, that's when you're tempted to put on thinking face and you're racking your brain. And sometimes I have to say a slightly simpler explanation, or maybe 2 answers instead of 5, where you can deliver them with very fluent, very good delivery on the basics, well enunciated, well inflected. That is more likely to make an impression on that judge than 5 arguments that absolutely devastate their position on the flow. So those are my 4 bits of advice about adjustment when you have a judge who's an unknown quantity. And I think that if you play with those and sort of build them into your instincts, build them into your intuition, the longer you are in situations where you have those debates, the more you'll spot the little cues that make those adjustments effective. But the last bit of advice is the far and away most important one, and it goes right to the heart of the potential of forensics to teach about human communication, and that is the mission statement of Northwest Christian University of Forensics, which is, we focus on excellence and let winning and losing take care of itself. We have in our minds a view of what excellent speaking and excellent debating looks like. Someone who's a novice has a very fuzzy, blurry view, but every debate that you're in and every debate that you see between excellent opponents sharpens up that image. And it gets sharper and sharper. And the sharper it gets, the more we aim ourselves at it and make adjustments, take feedback, refine our performance, train ourselves, and discipline ourselves. And that is the objective. Get as close as possible to that recognition of excellent debating. And the judge's role in that is that the judge is like the one at the airport who's got the lit wands and is guiding you where to go. Now, as sort of a side issue, the judge also decides who wins and loses, and one of your measures of what kind of progress you're making is how far are you going at tournaments. But that is secondary. Focus on winning and losing, and I said it completely backwards. Focus on excellence and let the winning and losing take care of itself. And when you do that, and when you then get a lay judge who behaves completely unpredictably, then instead of it seeming devastating, because it seems like what you set out to do just collapsed, it seems as though you failed in your objective. When that happens, then that gives you a new lesson to sit back and analyze. And if you have a number of judges who are behaving unpredictably, then that's like someone giving you a new puzzle book. If you're the kind of person who loves puzzles, sit back and analyze it and see if you can spot the pattern. And when you develop a theory about what's going on, when you develop kind of a working understanding of that pattern, see what adjustments you can make to where those close rounds start breaking in your favor. And that is the lesson, that when you can get that out of debate, you take with you to your life beyond debate, and you can size people up and read them even when they are unknown quantities, and you can make all kinds of difference in the world. So, little adjustments to make along the way, but really, if you've got the big picture right, then the unevenness and unpredictability of judge response shouldn't seem nearly as much of a source of frustration and a source of discouragement as maybe it has in the past.